Hey, George.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. If I haven't had the honor and the pleasure to meet each and every one of you, my name is Paul Heinzman, and I'm the lead pastor at Glad Tidings. I'm Judy's pastor. And on behalf of Judy and the family, we'd just like to thank you for making today a priority to celebrate Fred's life and what he meant to you, as well as obviously what he meant as a father, as a husband, as a friend to each and every one of us. Fred Beckham, 80. Of Washington unexpectedly passed away on Saturday, April 29th, 1923, at the OSF St. Francis Medical Center. Fred was born February 24th of 1943 in Morris Chapel, Tennessee, to Ralph and Dovey Grisham Beckham. He married Judy Tisdale on August 27th of 1965 in Pekin. Surviving is his wife Judy, their children Christy and husband Aaron Rose of Washington, Connie and husband Tony Witter of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and Brian and wife Holly Beckham of Pekin. Grandchildren Josiah, Rachel, Olivia, Amanda, Jacob, and Jonah Rose. Justin and his wife Jessica Witter. Jared and his wife Lauren Witter. Christian, husband Hugh Westoff, and Victoria and husband David Dawson. And Brianna, Braden, and Brooklyn Beckham. Great-grandchildren, Maria, Malachi, Colin, Ryan, Reagan, Reese, Eli, Oliver, Indy, and Ozzy. And let's not forget best friend Buddy. He was preceded in death by his parents and his stepmother, Mary. Fred served in the U.S. Army and was honorably discharged in 1965. He went on to work as a millwright at Caterpillar, retiring after many years of service. He enjoyed being active in retirement, working out at the East Side Center, fishing, and bowling. He loved any time spent with his family. Whether playing card games or putting puzzles together with them, he enjoyed every minute. He was also a lifelong bowler. And it should be included that he was inducted to the Greater Peoria Bowling Association Hall of Fame in 2013. Due to his honorable and faithful service in the U.S. Army, as well as the for the United States of America, I'd like to invite the honor guard to come at this time to present the flag. On behalf of a grateful nation. I think it would do us well for me to give you a couple permissions today. The first one is this: tell as many stories as you possibly can about how Fred has impacted your life. Quick story for me, as I was sitting with the family, we're preparing for this moment. I actually had a staff pastor come into our conference room and ask, "What's going on in here? I thought you were planning a funeral," because of all the laughter and all of the stories and all the hooting and hollering that was taking place in the room. And so I think the best way to celebrate Fred is to celebrate his life and what he meant to us. So don't hesitate when it's time to laugh. Don't hesitate when it's time to tell a story. And of course, don't hesitate when it's time to cry. At this time, I'd like to invite son Brian, followed by grandson Jared, to come and share some personal stories.
when Paul asked me when I wanted to do this, I said, I want to go first. Because I didn't know if I went to the funeral whether I'd be able to hold back the tears. Maybe that was a bad plan. I don't think it would have mattered. I got a lot to say. It may take a lot longer than it should have because I may be crying way too much. But I'm going to do the best I can, and y'all bear with me. I'd like to share with you a little bit today about my father. My dad was an only child of Ralph and Dovey, but as most of you know, he was raised by his grandparents, Ma and Pa Grissom, because tragedy struck his life at such a young age when his mother was taken from him due to cancer. I asked my father over the years if he remembered his mother, and he always said, no, not really. But thank God for the grandparents that he had that raised him from a small boy with strong Southern values that shaped him into the man that he would become. My father was a strong man right up until the day he passed away. He worked out regularly at Eastside several times a week. And he was healthy and young at heart. He bowled 3 to 4 times per week right up to the very end of his life. And Monday, the week that he died, he actually bowled twice that day. These are a list of some of the activities that he's done just in the last several years or so. He's gone kayaking, canoeing, whitewater rafting, zip lining, hiking in the mountains, played volleyball and badminton with his kids and grandkids, all as an elderly man. My sisters and I and our children all would get together with my mom and dad regularly. And when we did, we would always play games. Dad would always be right there in the middle of all the action. He loved to play cards, and it became a regular thing for Dad and myself and whatever 2 grandsons that we could get to stay up and play with us until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning playing cards. Dad would stay up all night long. As long as somebody would stay up and play, he'd be there. And it was always the grandkids that ended the game because they needed to go to bed. Grandpa could outlast them all. The Monday night before my dad passed away, he was bowling at the Christian Center in the Tournament of Champions. I was bowling there as well. And I sat next to my buddy Phil. I pointed across the room. I said, Phil, look at my dad. I said, he walks straight, tall, walks up to the line without stumbling or looking off balance. He throws that ball effortlessly down the lane. He's an 80-year-old man. I said, I would not be surprised if that man lives to be 100 years old. I was wrong. Things didn't turn out that way. But I still say he was the healthiest, most energetic 80-year-old man I've ever met in my life. He was not just strong physically, but emotionally as well. He kept his emotions the same in almost every situation. He rarely showed anger. I've heard that from multiple people as I've talked to people through the visitation. The only emotion he ever showed really was laughter. I can't remember a time in his 80 years that I ever saw my dad shed a tear or used foul language. I recall a story when I was younger, and my dad and I were putting up a fence in the backyard. We used to have hedges that went all the way across the back, and Dad wanted them down to put a privacy fence up. And I was back there helping him, and we had set all the posts. And after we got all the posts set, we're trying to set all the pieces of 6-foot pieces of fence on the posts. And my job was to hold and lean up against the post while he set the fence up and he would hammer the fence in. And Dad had just gotten him some new bifocals. So he taps that nail and gets it started as I lean on the backside. And then he moves that hand up on top of the fence and he rears back and he smacks that nail and he hits it right on the head. But it was his thumbnail, not the nail. And of course, like we Beckhams do, we always laugh first and ask if you're okay later. So, so I lay there, I stand there laughing, barely can stand. Dad doesn't cuss, he doesn't get upset. He looks at me, he grins his teeth together, he shakes his hand, and he says, "Boy, you think that's funny, don't you?" Oh, yeah, he did lose that thumbnail. Oh, several years later, my sister moved back from Oklahoma, and she moved into my grandparents' house. And I recall us helping her move in, and we were all there one day, and he's walking back and forth in this upstairs attic room that they have. And for whatever reason, when they built this house, they must have thought it was for midgets, because it was only about in this room at the end of the hallway, it was about 5'8". Well, Dad was about 5'10". I saw him hit his head on that spot at least 3 times that day. And before the day was over, he looked like he'd been with Indians, scalped blood coming out of the top of his head. And never once did he cuss or get upset. And I think I giggled and laughed every time he did it. He was a patient man, patient as he could be. He loved to go fishing, which for those of you who fish, sometimes you have to wait a long time before the fish start to bite. And I remember going with my dad as a young boy, being on that boat all day, whether the fish were biting or not. We stayed out there. Some days I thought it was never going to end. We would be out there from dawn till dusk. I did not inherit my dad's patience. I eventually decided that fishing was not that fun. Catching fish was fun, but I just didn't have the patience to actually fish. My dad's patience and kindness allowed him to deal with situations in life that were upsetting or disappointing to him simply by biting his teeth, putting his lips together, and shaking his head. If he was having a bad day, you would never know it. He never complained about anything. Never seemed to get stressed out about anything. As a kid, my mother used to say to me, "You got to learn to roll with the punches." And there's no better example of that than my father. One day, my dad, he came home from fishing. He had to bowl that night, and he was in a hurry. And he backed his boat up into the driveway, and our driveway was fairly steep and then flattened off at the top. And he used to back his boat and put it kind of to the side of the garage. And he backed that boat in, he unhooked it, kind of pushed it away from the boat, but didn't move his truck away. He left it sit there because he was in a hurry. So rather than park the truck in the driveway like he normally would, he let it kind of sit there at an angle, kind of in the way, because he was going in to take a shower, and he was immediately going bowling. Well, Dad come running out. He hopped in that truck. He put that truck in drive, and he took off down the driveway. And unbeknownst to him, the Debbie Dickinson's little twins had hooked the chains back up to his truck. And he pulled that boat right down into the back of his truck. Once again, he doesn't get angry, shakes his head, hooks that boat back up to his truck, backs it back up into the driveway, puts it where it belongs, puts his truck in drive, and off to bowling he goes. Whew. A few years later, my sister Connie got her driver's license. 2 days after getting her driver's license, my dad had an old blue Ford pickup truck, built like a tank, and she decided to pull out an intersection right in front of a car. And that car slammed right into the side of the driver's door where she was sitting. Luckily, it was built like a tank because she didn't get hurt. And that door never opened again. Your dad, that car was totaled. His truck wasn't that valuable, and it was as well totaled. And so Dad goes and gets him not a brand new truck, but a newer truck, an S10 pickup truck. And 6 months or 7 months later, my sister decided she wanted to get rid of that one too. She flipped that truck end over end, side over side. We got information from, I think it was a pastor that was driving from the opposite direction. And he said that he could see Connie flopping around like a rag doll inside of the truck as she bounced around. My sister said that she felt terrible. And she said to Dad when she saw him, "Dad, I'm so sorry I ruined another one of your trucks." And he says, "It's okay, girl. I'm just glad you're okay." No anger. Years later, my sister Connie, after being married and moving away, comes back to visit with her kids and brings with her her small children. And Dad had, I believe it was an S10 Blazer at this time. And two of the grandkids, Christy's daughter Amanda and Victoria, were playing out in the front yard. And Victoria decided that Dad's truck would look better if she took a rock and scratched circles all the way down both sides of the truck. So he finds out, he walks out, he looks at his truck. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't say a word. He just shaked his head back and forth, walked back in the house. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I would have not been able to hold that one in. Ugh. And maybe the simplest example of how my dad never complained, but also, this is very humorous. We were on a camping trip. And it was a horrible night's sleep. It was humid. The ground was not level. People had air mattresses, and because it wasn't level, they were sliding off their mattress in the middle of the night. And the next day when we were all sitting around, and one person after the next complaining about how rotten night's sleep they have, as my dad sits quiet in his lawn chair saying nothing, and Christy asks him, "Dad, how did you sleep last night? Did you sleep okay?" And he says, "I slid off my mattress too." But never said a word until somebody asked him. Maybe the reason Dad was able to deal with bad situations so well is that his mindset was always that if something could go wrong, that it probably would. Therefore, when something was bad for him, it was just, "See, I told you so." I recall my mother telling him at times, "Daddy," she would say, "stop being so negative." His response was always, "Mom, I'm not being negative. I'm just being realistic and telling you like it is." My mom tells me a story of when she had two daughters, but no son, and she goes to my dad and says, "Dad, don't you want to have another kid so you can have a son?" And my dad replies to her, "We'd probably just have another girl." So lucky for him, he was wrong. He had a son. If he had a girl, though, I'm sure he would have taken that disappointment in stride. He simply would have shook his head and said, "Mom, see, I told you so." He must have wanted a boy pretty bad, though, because he was willing to have another child, even though he thought he was just going to end up with another girl. I like to tease my sister Connie and tell her that she was lucky that she was born before me, because if I was born first, she wouldn't be here. Because my parents would have stopped having children after they got the child they really wanted. I'm glad things turned out the way they did, because I couldn't imagine our family without Connie or her wonderful family. My dad was a simple man. He wasn't flashy. He didn't care about having the nicest car or the nicest house. He was only concerned about making sure he could provide for his family. He was frugal, but he could also be generous as well. My dad knew how to stretch a dollar as far as he could go. His cousin Buddy told me a story one time of how when they were kids, they would leave and go do things together, they would leave the house with the exact same amount of money. They would be gone all day. They would do all the same things. When they returned home, Buddy was broke and Dad still had money in his pocket. That man knew how to stretch a dollar. After he passed away, I went through his wallet. He had some money in his wallet, but the majority of his wallet was full of coupons. Here was a man who no longer needed to use coupons. He was not poor, but still stretching that dollar as far as it could go. Whew. My dad's generosity was shown to me as a teenager. After I began to drive, I asked my dad if I could take his boat to the lake. And with all the bad luck he had, my sister wrecking 2 trucks, and the tendency to always expect the worst, you would think he would have said no, but he didn't. He let his 17-year-old son drive his truck and his boat, pull it 1 hour away to go tubing, skiing on a lake with his friends. And he cared more about making me happy than he cared about his worldly possessions that he could always replace. My dad was generous with his time as well. When I bought my house that I currently live in, it was a foreclosure. It had been empty for years. The yard was nothing but weeds and sticker burrs, and I wanted my daughter to be able to go out into the yard and play without getting hurt. So I killed off the entire yard with Roundup and scraped off all the weeds with a bobcat. I asked him to come help me lay sod over my whole yard, and my yard's pretty good size. So I had it delivered. It was 17 pallets of sod, over 1,000 rolls, about 3/4 of a semi-truckload. It took a flatbed truck to deliver it all, and I asked my dad to come help because I needed to get that grass down and start watering it. As you know, sod will die if it doesn't get down and get water on it quickly. That day, me and my wife, my mom and my dad, and even Cousin Buddy showed up and helped me lay all that sod. Those 2 men were 60 years old, helped me roll out every single roll of sod that I had purchased. I am 50 years old today, and I'm not sure that I could have do that today without being completely exhausted and sore. But they stuck with me till the end. I witnessed my father's kindness and generosity as he allowed people that he barely knew to come live in his home many times over the years. My mother had a heart of love for people in need. After both of my sisters had moved out, we had a spare bedroom, and she offered it to those in need many times. We even had another man living with us for a while. Dad never said no to anyone. That takes a special type of man to do this. The ability to value and love people for who they are. A trait that my mom had perfected. But some of that must have rubbed off on Dad too. I visited my father in the hospital Thursday when he was admitted. He told me that he thinks he has leukemia. I talked to him about it and told him I will be here tomorrow when the doctors come so that I can hear exactly what they have to say. His only concern was, did your mom take her medication? The next day I arrived at the hospital and Mom called because I got there before she did. And he asked me again, ask her if she took her medication. I told him that she had taken it yesterday and asked her to go take her medication now while she was on the phone so I could tell him that you had taken your medication. Here lied a man who felt like he was dying and he was focused on taking care of my mom. A few days after my father had passed, I received a call from his friend John Nolte. I had been thinking only a few minutes prior to that, I need to call John. Let him know what happened. John says to me, Brian, this is John Nolte. I don't know if you remember me, but me and your dad rode to work together for 10 years. He said the first year that we rode together, your dad never said a word all the way to work and all the way home. In the last 10 years, he said we never stopped laughing. He told me what a wonderful man he was. He thought Dad was, oh goodness. Told me what a wonderful man that he thought Dad was, and that he could not see him for a while. And when they would be together, they would just pick up where they left off, just laughing and having a good time. He told me how smart Dad was. He said he didn't know why he worked at Caterpillar because he was too smart to work there, but he was glad that he did because that gave him the opportunity to know him. He described my dad as a man who everybody loved, how he felt comfortable being around people regardless of who they were. He said he was just as comfortable being around people in church on Sunday as he was being around the people in the local tavern throughout the week. One thing I know for sure, that he was loved, will be missed by many. He is in a place where there is no sorrow, no sickness. His cup is no longer half empty. It's no longer half full, it's overflowing. We love you, Dad. We miss you. And we'll see you again someday.
I wish I went first. I'll get my words out. Give me just a second. I'm Jared Witter. I'm Connie's son, the second oldest of 13 grandkids. I loved my grandpa. All right. We, growing up, we would come here for summers at a time. I basically grew up in the same house my mom did. And Grandpa, he taught us to fish, he taught us to ski, and he taught us to bowl. He tried to teach me to bowl. I'm not very good at it, so I still bowl with bumpers. And turns out I wasn't very good at fishing either. And in fact, I didn't even really like fishing that much. What I liked was going on a boat with Grandpa. But I was a good skier, and I'm still a good skier. Like Brian said, he was cool, calm, and collected. And I was there whenever one of my sisters, Victoria, decided to draw on Grandpa's truck. And I ran outside to see what was going to happen, and all I saw was... And then he went back inside. He was always down for a game. If you asked him to play, the answer was quite literally always yes. We go on family vacations every other year. And one of my things that I always look forward to was trying to beat Brian and Grandpa at spades. And it's true, they were better at staying awake than I was. And I can't remember correctly, but I think Josiah will back me up on this. I'm pretty sure we won our last game. But that's how I remember it. Grandpa was so supportive, always at everything. But I hope that I am as loved and healthy as Grandpa was when he was 80. Grandma, you and Grandpa did so good, and I'm going to miss him. And thank you all for coming.
One of the songs that the family has selected to listen to this afternoon is I Can Only Imagine.
I can only imagine what it will be like when I walk by your side. I can only imagine what my eyes will see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when that day comes and I find myself standing in the sun. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine, yeah. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus? Or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence? Or to my knees will I fall? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. I can only imagine when all I would do is forever, forever worship you. I can only imagine.
Isn't that true for all of us? The reality that he's in heaven right now. The Bible tells me this, to be absent of this world is to be in the presence of God. And as much as he loves you, Judy, and as much as he loves his family and every single one of you as you sit here today, he would not give up where he is right now. I thought I'd share a couple verses about heaven. You know, what is heaven? Well, first of all, it's where God lives. It's his dwelling place. This is what it tells me in Psalm 33. From heaven, the Lord looks down and sees all mankind. From his dwelling place, he watches all who live on earth. He who formed the hearts of all, who considers everything they do. He smiles at us, he looks down, and he notices every detail of our life. Heaven is a place that Jesus resides. It tells me in the book of Acts that, "Man of Galilee," they said, "why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way that you have seen him go into heaven," the place where Jesus resides. We can be confident this is where Fred is today. Paul writes to the church of Philippi, and he says this, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am going on living in the body, this will mean fruitful labor for me. Yet, what shall I choose? How? I do not know. I am torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is far, far better." And then, of course, when he's on the cross and the thief is beside him, he says, "This is paradise." Jesus answered him, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." I think that there's a statement that Fred would be screaming at us, even though he never yelled, would be, "I wish you could see me now."
Have all been answered. I finally arrived. The healing that had been delayed has now been realized. No one's in a hurry. There's no schedule to keep. We're all enjoying Jesus, just sitting at his feet. If you could see me now, I'm walking streets of gold. If you could see me now, I'm standing tall and whole. If you could see me now, you know I'd seen his face. If you could see me now, you know the pain's erased. You wouldn't want me to ever leave this place. If you could only see me now, my light and temporary trials have worked out for my good. To know it brought him glory when I misunderstood. Though we've had our sorrows, its perfect place. You can only see me now. If you could see me now. If you could only see me
You know, at this time, I was going to share a lot of the stories that we were able to capture in our time together at the church. As we would laugh and we were remembering the things that took place in the lives of the marriage as well as a father and to everybody involved. But what I thought I would do here is maybe describe for a moment what he was to me, and then recapture some of all the moments that Jared and Brian captured during their time of sharing their stories. Because when I met Fred, I have to admit that he was a little quiet. He was a man of few words. But there's times in your life that you meet somebody that they might be an individual of few words, but there is a quiet presence about them. When I was together with the family, I would say if I were to describe him as anything, it would be this: quiet strength. It must have been that strength that allowed him to maintain his composure when the craziest things of life happened. It was probably that quiet strength, and yes, what Brian was saying might be true, that his glass might have been half empty. He was expecting things to go wrong at times, but maybe his quiet strength was what helped him always choose people over stuff. And so it's been a blessing to know him, a blessing to even text back and forth. He was texting me updates. This is how Judy's doing today. Hey, you can be praying for her. And to have that type of interaction, I know that he cared about everybody else in life more than he cared for himself. Let me capture some things that the family were sharing. Number one, he was a non-complainer. Didn't complain about anything. He was talented. You have to be talented to roll as many 300 games as he rolled, as well as carried over a 200 average. Now, me as a non-bowler, doesn't make any difference to me whatsoever, but that has to be really important to a bowler. He was very talented. He was described as somebody that can fix anything. And after wrecking all those cars, he had to fix quite a few. He was a rescuer. As we were together, Christy was telling a story about the time that she was driving a stick shift vehicle. I'm assuming a standard vehicle, and she got stuck at an intersection. She didn't know what to do. She calls Dad, and he comes around. He's a rescuer, and he could get the car started even when she couldn't. And I don't know how he can just shake his head and smile after wrecking a car the day after you get your driver's license, and then 7 months later total another car. But Connie, he sure loved you. The insurance was canceled, and yet you never heard a word of it. Never yelled. As a father, can I just say that really challenges me? And after walking out, after our long conversation and hearing the wonderful stories about Fred, I felt like I was a bad dad. What possesses somebody to ride with somebody to work for 10 years so his kids can have the car? What would possess somebody to always look past the faults and love unconditionally? Quiet strength. And Judy, how much he loved you. Even in his last moments, he was checking on you, even though he was struggling at the hospital. The family wanted to take just a few moments to share some of those memories that they've shared with me so vividly through video. So let's watch this video together. you can recognize how much he loved his family and his friends. There's a scripture that a good friend of mine was his favorite, mentor, pastor, and I thought it fit perfectly for today. It says this in Psalm 37, verses 23 to 25, "The Lord directs the steps of the godly. He delights in every detail of their lives. Though they stumble, they will never fall, for the Lord holds them by the hand. I have been young, and now I am old. Yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread." I think it captures Fred and who he was as an individual, but yet also allows me as a pastor to talk about just a few things before we dismiss today. The first one is this, is that the Lord delights in every detail of your life. The same way as he wanted to be there for every moment of his family's life, and he wanted to be a part of every single detail, we serve a God who wants to have that same delight in our lives as well. I can just hear him talking with Jesus now, and Jesus asking him the question, "Tell me that time one more time that Connie wrecked the second car and you didn't get upset and you just smiled and laughed and you just shook your head." Because he delights in every moment, regardless of what it is. And he would love to delight in every moment of yours. I know that Fred delighted in Jesus because of the way that he loved his family. And his love for God became a reflection of his love for his family. He delighted in them the same as Jesus delights in us. The second part is that the Lord sustains us. I know that the family and you as friends, as you remember incredible stories and moments that you shared with him, that at times it's going to be a struggle. It might even be difficult, but the Lord holds you by your hand and he will sustain you through every circumstance, every conversation, and even this moment that's so difficult for you and for the family. He'll sustain you. And lastly, the Lord is always, always faithful. Tough times come, and you're navigating through it right now. And personally, from me to the family, I know that your next few days are going to become difficult, but there's no greater encouragement that I can offer you, but that the Lord will be with you, and he's faithful. The righteous will not be forsaken. The seed of the family of Christ, you are his heir. You are his sons, you are his daughters, and even though Brian feels like he's the favorite, he would look at all three of you and say, "You are all my favorites." I'm reminded of an old hymn, "Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see." And my prayer over you as a family is that morning by morning, new mercies you will see. All that you need, his hands will provide. Why? Because great is his faithfulness. I think it's a moment for all of us this afternoon to reflect. Have we given our heart to Jesus? Have we allowed the reflection of Jesus to be so present in our life that he delights in us, that he sustains us, and that he is faithful to us? I know for me and my personal reflection, I'm going to say a short prayer. And I would encourage you to say a similar prayer, because it's not the words that you say, it's a condition of your heart that makes you right with the Lord. But as I pray, I'm going to ask him to forgive me, because I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. How about you? I'm not alone, am I? But he's faithful and just to forgive every single one as I ask him, even the ones I forget about. And then I'm going to ask him to continue to help me live my life for him, because I know that a life lived through him and in him is better than anything that I can manufacture or create. It is a life, and in fact, the Bible describes it as abundant life, more than I could ever ask, imagine, or dream. And I know if there's anything that he would say to us right now, if he could, is this isn't goodbye, this is just a see you later. As long as each and every one of us make that same commitment to Christ. Would you pray with me? Lord, I thank you for today. I thank you for the opportunity. What an incredible blessing to honor Fred and what he's meant to us and what he has meant to you and the memories, and to be able to collect all of those thoughts and celebrate it together. But there's no greater memory than the moment that I gave my heart to you, the moment that I said, forgive me of everything that I've done wrong, all of my sin, not just some, but forgive all of it. And Lord, I pray that you would do that again today. And if there'd be anybody in this room that needs to pray the same prayer, Lord, that they would just offer themselves and say, I've made mistakes and I give my heart to you today. Would you forgive us? And Lord, I pray that you'd give me the strength, you'd give the family the strength, you give all of these friends the strength, that you would sustain them to live their life for you every single day. And that this would not be a goodbye, but a see you later, and one day that we would be joined together in heaven, celebrating as Fred is already celebrating with you right now. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name, everyone said, Amen. I believe that the Lord would look down on Fred Beckham right now and say, well done. Well done, thy good and faithful servant. There's one more song that the family wanted to share with you. I wish you were here.
I can just see them walking on the shores of heaven, praising the Lord and watching the tide roll in. Friends that have gone on, oh how I miss you so. And somehow I know if you could, that you'd let me know that you're doing fine and it doesn't hurt anymore. Things couldn't be better, and heaven is worth waiting for. That you miss me too until